Hey, today I'll be talking about the novel part that relates to the episode 75 through 77 of RuYi's Love. Smooth. A bit of a difference in the setup of this pivotal scene. The rumors about Yuncha and RuYi were all over the palaces, and thanks to HaiLan, they were replaced with rumors of Yuncha and Yanwan. But the emperor calls RuYi in because he doesn't believe them and thinks that Yuncha is in love with her. In fact, he has already decided to have Yuncha killed. The emperor said coldly, "Liu, pass on my decree. Imperial Guardling Yuncha has committed the crime of impertinence and will be immediately beaten to death." Liu didn't know what had caused the emperor's sudden change in expression. He hurriedly moved to obey, but deliberately slowed his steps. RuYi's complexion changed. She forced a smile and said, "You've always highly valued Imperial Guardling, and you even granted him a marriage. I don't understand. Can I ask what wrong he has committed to anger you so?" There was a cold arc on the corner of the emperor's lips. "You don't understand?" They have the most infuriating argument where he says she used the word cloud in a poem she recited and that shows she was clearly thinking of Yuncha. She responds that following that logic, if she ever wants to look up at the clouds, she must also be thinking of Yuncha. So from now on, is she never to raise her head again? RuYi is obviously right, but because he can never be wrong, he responds that she is arguing much more than she usually does, which shows that she must be feeling guilty. There's just no winning with this guy. Every response she gives him, he somehow turns into, "Aha, so you admit it." RuYi says that he is behaving like this because he feels guilty about handling the 12th prince's kidnapping so incompetently, and he slaps her. This is when Yu rushes in, followed by Yanwan. Yanwan says she tried to stop Yu, but she wouldn't be persuaded, and Yu says she has evidence of RuYi being unfaithful. Yanwan slaps Yu twice and slyly takes the opportunity to clear herself of suspicion by telling the emperor that though she and Yuncha were childhood sweethearts, they drifted apart after entering the palace. RuYi sneers to herself as she thinks of all the details Yanwan so conveniently left out. So most of the main points are the same, but in a different order and with different people present. The emperor seems to believe Yanwan, and this is when he calls in Yuncha to face his wife's accusation. Mao Qian goes on and on about how poor and neglected she's been before finally getting to her accusation that Yuncha only thinks of RuYi. RuYi's reaction is hilarious. RuYi met her gaze and lazily dusted off the apricot-colored silk in her hand. "Wonderful. You've finally gotten to the point. Concubine Yu's painstaking efforts in finding you were not in vain. But these words are like an opera. One that people can guess the ending of after just hearing the opening line. How dull." In fact, RuYi is full of sarcasm this whole scene and is just completely over it. Also, I don't know if I missed this or the author forgot or what, but Yu had her front teeth knocked out just a few chapters ago, and I expected at least a small mention of it, even if it was just like giving her a lisp or something, but no. The palace must have really good dental care. Anyway, the evidence is the same, the rebuttal is the same, and when everyone leaves, RuYi and the emperor get into it again, and RuYi tells him that the suspicion he thinks he's feeling is really just jealousy and embarrassment that another man saved his wife and child while he stood there like a fool. They go back and forth, and the emperor ends up slamming his hand on the table so hard that he hurts his thumb, startling RuYi and causing her to break her jade bracelet, cutting her palm. This calms them down, and the emperor says he will reinstate her harem managing powers. RuYi wants to know if that's because he trusts her or because he doesn't want people gossiping about their relationship. The emperor actually is trying here, it seems, but she tells him he can put whoever he wants in charge of the harem and goes to leave. Holding on to her sore knees, she took a few slow steps forward and then heard his deep and sad voice from behind. "Do the two of us have to be like this?" Her legs slowed as if they were weighed down with lead, but she refused to turn her head, afraid to turn back and see that face. That face that was slowly aging and yet still as sharp as ever. "From the moment I realized that you suspected me, it seemed like the two of us would never walk forward together again. Perhaps you made mistakes, perhaps I did as well, but this isn't the kind of thing that is easily fixed. The moment I was saved by Ling Yuncha, the expression in your eyes was not joy that I had been saved, but doubt and suspicion. It made my blood run cold." And so ends that. What makes me the most upset is that she has to go through all of this and she never even considered having an affair. Yes, it turns out that I was completely wrong about where their relationship was going, and it stays just as chaste as it was in the drama, much to my disappointment. And then some more drama between 5th Prince and HaiLan as things finally bubble over. I write notes as I'm getting through the novel, and for this part I wrote, HaiLan is actually being nice to 5th Prince. Wow! But boy was I wrong. At first, they're having a nice conversation, HaiLan is caring about his health, they chat about his wives, and then 5th Prince makes a terrible blunder. Like a fool, he says that the 12th prince is getting bigger by the day and worries that with him around, he feels like he will never be able to reach his full potential. HaiLan, who like I said, had been smiling and having a grand old time with him, freezes and her smile fades. HaiLan's voice was completely devoid of warmth. Kneel. How could Yongchi disobey? He bent his knees and knelt on the ground. HaiLan took off the gold and coral nail protectors on her fingers one by one. Then she landed a sharp slap on Yongchi's left cheek, followed soon after by another on his right. She didn't stop, hitting him hard with tears in her eyes. If it weren't for your royal mother, the two of us would have died in Yanxi Palace that year. Your eyes wouldn't even have opened to see the world. Without her, you would be nothing but the bastard son of a consort without favor, who would have spared a thought for you. She continues on about how everything they have is thanks to RuYi, and how dare he say something like that. 5th Prince is clearly feeling a bit rebellious today and says it feels like RuYi only put so much care into raising him so that he will be helpful to her actual son one day. HaiLan pretty much responds, damn right, and she's right to do it. The best you can hope for is to be a helping hand to her and her son. Didn't you learn anything from your older brother, the 1st Prince? During her rant about devotion to RuYi, HaiLan slips up and mentions how she had to take poison to get RuYi out of the cold palace. Yongchi looked up at her as if he had been struck with lightning. In a trembling voice, he said, Mother, for the Empress, you were even willing to poison yourself? You were still pregnant with me at the time. Mother, you... HaiLan doubles down. She's sorry she had to do it, but she does not regret it. She says even if he becomes suspicious of her, he must never doubt RuYi. 5th Prince starts to cry, and remember, this is grown man, several wives and children, recently murdered a consort, 5th Prince. HaiLan comforts him, but then triples down, saying, I don't trust anyone but your royal mother. You must do the same. Always remember that. 5th Prince responds, shouldn't I be the person you love most? HaiLan half knelt and reached out her hand, stroking his young, full face. In it, she could vaguely make out the Emperor's elegant expression. You really do look like your royal father did when he was young. What a pity, though, that he never had me in his heart and I never had him in mine. The people I love most in this world are Ulanara RuYi and Aishinja Luo Yongqi. But I must make this clear to you. The relationship I have with your royal mother is longer and deeper. The trust between us can never be shaken, not by anyone. I want you to understand not to disappoint or betray someone who is so good to you. She stood and said tiredly, Yongqi, the palace gates have already been locked up. Sleep here and think things over carefully. And by here, she means her living room area with no bed. She leaves him as he sobs, Mother, why do you treat me like this? Since I've already failed with my RuYi Yuncha speculation, I'm placing a new bet here and now that Yongqi is going to do something that will contribute to RuYi's demise. I don't think he would go so low as to pair up with Yanwan, but I think he's going to make a choice, knowing that it will kill RuYi and still go through with it. I mean, HaiLan, how can you say all this stuff to your son and not expect him to completely hate RuYi? Alright, one more thing. Mao Qian was not sentenced to prison at the end of the trial, and later goes to see the emperor in private to stir up even more trouble. She tells him about Yuncha hiding the needle in the saddle from the incident when 8th Prince fell off the horse, which, yeah, whatever happened to that in the drama? We saw Yuncha finding the saddle, we saw him taking it home and hiding it, we saw Mao Qian overhear the conversation, and later break into his box and find the saddle, and then it's just never brought up again. She doesn't bring it up at all during the trial. So anyway, the emperor calls in Yuncha's buddy Zhou Xiao and asks him about Mao Qian's allegation. Zhou Xiao, being a good friend, tries his best to defend Yuncha, saying this must be a setup by Mao Qian, but he does know the truth of the matter as Yuncha discussed it with him before. Mao Qian doesn't quit and says Yuncha must have hidden the saddle in order to protect the empress, insinuating that RuYi was behind the whole thing to get rid of the 8th Prince and the 5th Prince in one move. She keeps pushing, saying that had that not happened, Jia wouldn't have used her dog to try and get revenge by killing the 12th Prince, and the emperor would still have his precious daughter. The emperor burst into tears at the thought, which took me way off guard because it seems so out of character, but hey, she's the author. The emperor starts to believe that Yuncha and RuYi have been in cahoots all along. He sends Mao Qian off, only for Yanwan's first maid, Chunchan, to come in and report that Yanwan was burned by her second maid, Lan Cui, carelessly spilling her tea. Oh, Lan Cui was still alive at this point in the book. The emperor intends to send Lan Cui to the punishment bureau, but Chunchan says Yanwan is asking permission to handle it herself. Zhou Xiao shuddered and suddenly remembered that when he had been waiting outside the palace gates, Jin Zhong had given him a superficial smile and said, "Think carefully about what you say. the person you love is in the hands of Imperial Consort Ling. If you watch the drama, you might have noticed that Zhou Xiao really likes Lan Cui, and in the book they're actually in a relationship. Yanwan knows this and is using it to blackmail him. She timed this whole thing, sending Chunchan to report to the emperor, knowing that Zhou Xiao would overhear and understand that if he doesn't finger Yuncha, Lan Cui will most likely be killed for burning her master. So he pretty much confesses that Yuncha is in love with RuYi. He's then banished from the palace. Yanwan arranges to have him killed and does the same for Lan Cui just to make sure there are absolutely no possible threads left to follow. They must have run out of time or something because they clearly set up for these scenes in the drama, they just never come to fruition. Mao Chen sees the saddle and the needle, but dies before she can bring it up. They do set up Zhou Xiao being smitten with Lan Cui, but again, she dies before that can come to anything, which is fine. I mean, it's more realistic that not every single plotline leads to its own satisfying conclusion, but still, it's fun to see what the original plan was. Till next time, thanks for watching.